Philip, glad to have you join us here on Arise News.
Thank you.
Well, let's start this way. So what will you tell Nigerians about the news making the round that lawmakers were induced to approve the emergency declaration?
Well, thank you very much for the privilege to be here tonight again, and to equally thank Nigerians for the confidence in the People's Parliament and for their unwavering support all these years that we came on board in the 10th House of Representatives under the leadership of His Excellency Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas. Nigerians have been quite supportive in what we do and what we have been doing in the Parliament. And this recent event in what we call the state of necessity. First and foremost, before Mr. President took the decision to proclaim the state of necessity in Rivers State, he invited the leadership of the National Assembly, and at that meeting, the executive and the parliament, the leaders of both arms of government, took their time to study some of the security situation report as presented by the security agencies, by the service chiefs and the National Security Advisor. And both leaders agreed that, of course, it was a necessity, for something to be done in Rivers State. Having agreed that something was actually wrong in Rivers State, and the president, having invoked that doctrine of a necessity to proclaim the state of emergency in Rivers State, the letter was read on the floor of the Parliament, and because the president's action had come some hours before that sitting, of course, members in the usual way of parliamentary business embarked on extensive consultations with their leaders, with stakeholders, and with their constituents, on the way forward. Of course, few hours after the proclamation, we saw in the news reactions of so many Nigerians, people speaking for, and some also speaking against the proclamation of the emergency rule. And of course, those who spoke in favor of the emergency rule and those who spoke against it all anchored their reasons, on constitutional point of view. So as a parliament and as a people's representatives, our duty is to take it up from there, because in the wisdom of the Constitution, it was also envisaged that there will be a time like that in the history of our country where there will be contentious issues as to decisions to be made by the executive, and that the people's immediate representatives, who are members of the National Assembly in both chambers, would have the responsibility to further dissect that issue before it can be given life, to come into operation. So what did we do? We consulted, we reached out to our people, we reached out to stakeholders, and we did it across board, looking at political stability of Rivers State in particular and the country as a whole. The security situation as was painted by the security chiefs, presented to Mr. President, and for those who went overboard to equally do their independent investigation. And as a parliament, we came together in our wisdom to say, yes, the decision taken by Mr. President may not necessarily be the best at the moment, but to fine-tune it and make it the best to save the river situation, we propose those amendments. So in doing this, of course, I think $5,000 will be too small for anyone, not even a member of the National Assembly, to first sell his conscience and to sell his people or the interests of the very people that we represent.
All right, now you've talked about that. Now you've been calling and mentioning people, representative. You said it so many times I can hardly count it.
Yes.
In the House of Reps,
Yes.
I know that in the Senate, voice votes were used.
Yes.
Was that the same in the House of Reps?
Yes. Since we came on board in 2000.
Now, I'm going somewhere. So
yes.
Was that the same in the House of Reps? Were voice votes used?
Well, before we got to the voice vote, because to jump into conclusion, on a platform like this will be suicidal.
I think voice votes were used.
Nigerians need to know before we got to that point.
Because I want to follow up on that question.
Yes, I will get
voice
there.
Votes were
No,
used.
I want to help you so you'll
Okay.
also be able to reframe your question.
Okay.
Yes, before we got to that point, we had an executive session. At the executive session, we looked at the issues, and at that point, members raised issues, and in the nature of the executive session, that is where Mr. Speaker is not the speaker during the executive session. He sits amongst us as an ordinary member before plenary. And at that point, we, equally derobe ourselves of our political leanings, of our ethnic colorations, to speak as Nigerians. And rising from the executive session, we reached a consensus that yes, this is indeed a necessity. So we went into full plenary. And at the course of plenary, members stood up, to air their views. Some raised constitutional issues as to the issue of quorum. And as a people's parliament, we follow the rules as stipulated in our standing orders. And right there, Mr. Speaker delegated a member of the parliament to carry out, one of the clerks, to carry out a head count and equally look at the register. Then it was confirmed that we had 243 members sitting. And after that, at the executive session, we had also discussed what method of voting should be used in terms of the recommendations that members will come up with. And because we had agreed that yes, it was a necessity and to support what the president has done to restore peace back to Rivers. Remember that Rivers State has members of the National Assembly who are also our colleagues.
You know why I asked that question? Because please. I remember that one of yours,
yes,
Obi,
yes,
Agwocha,
yes,
he did stand up, I think it was during the plenary,
yes,
to ask that a head count be taken.
Yes. You see,
the speaker shuts him down.
No, Mr. Speaker did not shut him down. When we resume plenary on daily basis, I think Obi Agwocha is also familiar with our practice. This is not like because of Mr. President proclamation of state of emergency, we should change our rules. Okay. We have established the rules before now that before the commencement of every plenary session, attendance must be taken. Okay. And a head count must be reached before you can commence plenary. We've had a situation where we lost one of our colleagues and members didn't come.
Attendance may have been taken, but there was no head count. Was there head count? No.
No, you see, we are honorable members. We have where we take the attendance. Taking attendance, no honorable member is allowed to write or mark attendance on behalf of another member. The sergeant at arms are there, to monitor that members who come in put in their attendance. And we do this on the basis of our political parties. So you have where the APC members take their attendance, you have where Labour Party members take their attendance, so that it becomes easy for the sergeant at arms to identify who is who. So this is our regular practice since we came on board as a parliament. We don't commence plenary and ask for head count. Okay. We do the head count before the commencement of plenary.
Why I was going there is that, like I said earlier, you were talking about representatives of the people,
Yes.
know. I gather that you're supposed to use, according to the Constitution and your rule, there's supposed to be a count to approve this particular, numerically, even Ireti Kingibe of the Senate has unequivocally condemned the fact that voice votes were used. They should have been you need 2/3, and that wasn't done. And because the members you were talking about, I mean your people, representatives, want to see how their representatives, each of them, voted, but they weren't accorded that, do I call it honor?
Well, you see, it is something that we may look at in the future. But as it stands today, because when we came on board, even the election of the principal officers of the House, when we came on board June 13th, 2023, it was the sergeant at arms, the register used by the sergeant at arms, that members were called for the vote that was used to enthrone the leadership of the House of Representatives. We have established this culture for almost 2 years in the Parliament, and having established that culture, we have voted on critical national issues, before now, where Honorable Obi Agocha also participated.
Yeah.
And it was voice vote that was used. We voted on the tax reform bills. It was voice vote that was used. We voted on the student loan. It was voice vote that was used.
But this is very critical. This is emergency rule. How do you determine who and who voted for or against? Because you need 2/3. How do you determine 2/3? It's not possible with a voice vote.
No, it is. And let me give you a good example with myself.
And then you're disobeying.
No, we did not. Let me give you a good example. On my second day in the Parliament, I brought a motion before the House. The need for government to look at the issues leading to Nigerians leaving the country, particularly the youth, in quote, the Japa syndrome.
Yeah.
And that motion was defeated. Are you saying that issues like, the sharp departure of our young people out of the country is not as important as the issues
that can be compared to the state of emergency?
No, you see,
Philip, because you're allowed to move anytime to anywhere.
No, you see,
you're not even supposed to stop people from moving. Really?
No. It was the motion was not to stop people.
Okay.
The motion was to urge government to address those issues leading to why people leave the country.
But you can't compare that to
no. You see why people leave. Some people leave as a result of security issues. You are no longer comfortable with where you work in the country because of insecurity. You want to go. That is human life. People are leaving because of health issues. People are leaving for educational purposes.
Okay,
these are all very important issues.
Let me ask you this. Some are saying, I'm sure you listened to that comment coming from the former president,
yes,
Jonathan, that he's one of the people saying that the president Tinubu is working against democracy with this action he took in Rivers State. And he knocked the three arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary for this. I mean, wouldn't you say that the former president is right when he says knocks the three arms of government, that the president is working against democracy?
Well,
because he suspended, even if he declares state of emergency, should you suspend elected officials?
You see, former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, of course, a highly respected African. He was here at a time in history. He offered his best. But you see, the beautiful thing about government is that the day you leave, government has to move.
Yeah.
You play your role and leave the rest
and
for
shift.
Another person. Today we are in Parliament. One day we'll also leave the Parliament and leave the younger people to also offer their best from wherever we'll stop. Having established that, I think former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan is entitled, to his opinion. I don't know his view, his relationship with the Parliament when he was there. It wasn't very beautiful. You recall how he started when he tried to impose his own choice, Mulikat Akande Adiola, on the House of Representatives. And the members of the Parliament at that time disagreed with him. That led to the election of Right Honorable Tambuwa as Speaker. And after that time, former President Goodluck Jonathan, as President, never saw any reason, to make up his relationship with the Parliament. So it is possible that he's using his own lenses at the time he was President and what used to be the relationship between his office
so
and
you
the
think
Parliament.
That the President is not working against democracy with this action?
At that time. Now, I think it is too early to judge because the Parliament has made very useful recommendations. We as a Parliament, we know this current President. We know him as a Democrat. We have had dealings and engagement with him for over 18 months now as a Parliament. And we know him as a man who respects his words. We know him as a man who respects the institution of the Parliament and our democracy. And of course, all Nigerians too will give it to him as one of the fighters for our democracy. So what I would say at this point, we have given Mr. President some very vital recommendations.
All right, let me just briefly take this question. It will be the last. The President of the Senate, in bidding his gavel, said he was a unanimous decision. All the members agreed. Not all the lawmakers were in agreement in the Senate. Kingibe, Siraka Dixon. With the voice vote, this can be the same. Or should I ask you, is this the same in the House?
No,
and all the members agreed with this decision?
No,
unanimous vote?
Yes, there is a saying that the minority,
oh yeah,
right,
will have their say.
Would have their say, but the majority will have their way. Now, this is the practice in Parliament everywhere in the world.
In democracy, yeah.
No individual can actually branch off the decision of the Parliament. Even the people, if you bring Honorable Obi Agocha to this studio, he will say the same thing because he heard his view, he was heard, but the decision of the majority of parliamentarians took the day, and that is what it is. So at this point, it is no longer our individual opinion.
All right. Philip
it is the position of the Parliament.
Yeah, Philip Abwa said, the deputy spokesperson for the House. The question will still remain, why did you parliamentarians not use the electronic board counting head to head to get a 2/3? But we'll leave it there.
The answer is very simple. Before I go, we have made it a practice and a custom since we came on board in 2023 to use the voice vote in deciding so many constitutional issues.
All right, thank you, sir.